Recently, I switched from a Canon ATD, which you can see on the shelf right there, to a Sony a7R III, which you can't see because it's what is recording me right now. Today, I'm going to talk about my switch to full frame, but if you want to know why you either love or hate Sony, and whether the a7R III is worth it in 2020, you can go ahead and subscribe and hit that bell icon so you don't miss those videos when they come out. Hello, I'm Noah from Anything Cameras, the channel that focuses on helping you improve your filming and photography. And as I said, I'm talking about my switch from an APS-C DSLR to a full-frame mirrorless. I won't be focusing on the DSLR versus mirrorless aspect quite as much, but I think it will come into play as I talk about the change. So let's get the elephant in the room out of the way first. Full frame is obviously going to be more expensive in terms of the price of the camera itself and in price of the lenses, so just keep your budget in mind. And of course, I spent way more on this setup than I did on my Canon 80D setup, so naturally it is going to be better. In my opinion, the first thing you notice when you use a full-frame camera for the first time is depth of field. Now, this wasn't my first time using a full-frame camera, just owning one, but the change is still there. Even at standard kit lens apertures, such as f3.5 or f5.6, the depth of field is so much more shallow and pleasing that it's immediately noticeable and makes your images that much better. The other big difference is dynamic range. Even though this camera is a high megapixel camera at 43 megapixels, the dynamic range and low light performance are both way beyond any APS-C camera I've used. Now, of course, the dynamic range and low light performance, even in smaller sensor sizes, such as micro four thirds, is increasing at a drastic rate because processing technology just gets better and better. And this means that some of the newer generation APS-Cs might even perform equally or better than this camera, as it is 2 years old. But at the same time, switching from an even older camera, such as the 2016 ADD, the dynamic range and low light performance are just so much better. You can push the shadows more without getting as much artifacting or loss of detail. You can boost the ISO safely at, say, 10,000 with a little clever post-processing, whereas on my Canon ADD, I couldn't use 6400 in professional applications. And all of this means that in many situations, you're overall going to get better image quality if you have a lens of the same caliber. Before I continue, please be sure to subscribe and ring that bell icon so that you get notified every time we post a video. All of this sounds great. Why shouldn't you switch to full frame? Well, as I said, there's the price. Full frame cameras, because the sensor is so much larger and so much more expensive to produce, are often going to be up to several thousand more expensive than APS-C cameras. Of course, the price ranges for cameras, APS-C or full frame, vary a lot, but the cheapest full frame camera out there is probably the Canon EOS RP, which is about $1,000, whereas you can get a pretty high-end APS-C camera, such as the Canon M50, which is their latest mirrorless APS-C camera, for, I think it's somewhere around $500. Also, the lenses themselves are often going to be more expensive. I'm not exactly sure why this is, except for the fact that they just need more glass and bigger glass, and that bigger glass is often harder to make as sharp. There's also the fact that full-frame cameras and lenses are going to be bigger. So if you're a travel photographer or videographer, or if you just travel frequently and need to bring your camera gear with you, you may be better off going with a mirrorless APS-C camera, as even mirrorless full-frame cameras are often, if not always, bigger. There are also little things, like the fact that you're probably going to get better in-body image stabilization if you go with an APS-C camera, because those sensors are smaller and can move around more, if that's something you're looking for. And then there's options on the market. Several companies have been in the mirrorless APS-C game longer than they've been in the mirrorless full-frame game. So if you're wanting to buy mirrorless, like I firmly believe you should, DSLRs are kind of dead now, then There are several less options, as Canon and Nikon are only just getting into that full-frame mirrorless game, whereas Canon, Sony, and Fujifilm all have had lines of mirrorless APS-C cameras for many years, and they've had more time to develop that technology. So your mileage may vary based on your budget, the gear you get, the style of shooting, and what you're upgrading from. But so far, my switch to full frame has been nothing but good, and I don't think I'll be going back anytime soon, if ever. So naturally, even at Apertures? I think you've done that one too. Apertures. Wait, did I say depth of field or dynamic range? I said dynamic range. That it's immediately noticeable, even in smaller sensored cameras such as Micro Four Thirds. Wait, how did I start that? Whatever, I'll just read it. Even in smaller, is increasing at a dramatic. So all of this sounds great.